when these lights go down and I'm a rolling stone, when the show leaves town and we put it on the road, I've got a wandering mind and a hand on the wheel. People listen to these songs, do you know how I feel? 'Cause this ain't some rhinestone bit, and this ain't some circus show. Son, this is pure cowboy shit, ain't your daddy's rodeo. No, it ain't his rodeo.
Thanks for joining us today, and welcome to Cracker Culture, the podcast for real Floridians, featuring Ford O'Connell, and I am Smokin Joe. Before we get started, let me tell you about our sponsor, Farmer Joe's Fresh Market, located at 1401 Southwest Pine Island Road in beautiful Cape Coral, Florida. Farmer Joe's for all your grocery needs, guaranteed the greatest grocery store in all of Lee County. Well, Ford, I'm glad to see you survived the Arctic cold of Pennsylvania.
I mean, you got to understand, we were at that game, and it was like minus 23 wind chill. I've been in some cold places, but let me tell you something. I never appreciated Florida more.
Oh, well, you sent enough cold weather down here to keep me from the space heater while you was gone. So,
well, it's always about the falling iguanas.
Well, Ford, I wanted to talk to you a story that I'm sure you've been probably pressed about is this George Santos. And I got a little clip here of Tulsi Gabbard, who Tulsi was a former Democrat, and to see her go after, she's changed her affiliation, but to see her go after George like this was pretty interesting. Let me show you this and get your take on this.
Congressman-elect Santos, thank you for joining us today. First question I really want to ask you, now that all this has been revealed, is what does the word integrity mean to you?
Well, Tulsi, thank you for having me. You know, to answer your question, integrity is very important. And like I said to the New York Post, embellishing
what does
my
it mean,
was a
though?
mistake.
What does it mean? Because the meaning of the word actually matters in practice.
Of course, it means to carry yourself in an honorable way. And I made a mistake. And I think humans are flawed, and we all make mistakes, Tulsi. I think we can all look at ourselves in the mirror and admit that once in our life we made a mistake. I'm having to admit this in national television for the whole country to see, and I have the courage to do so because I believe that in order to move past this and move forward and be an effective member of Congress, I have to face my mistakes, and I'm facing them. The reality is that I remain committed to doing everything I set forward in my campaign. I'm not a fraud. I'm not a fake. I didn't materialize from thin air. I worked damn hard to get where I got my entire life. Life wasn't easy. It didn't start off easy. As I've said it many, many times, I come from abject poverty. I made some mistakes, and I own up to them. And now I want to put this past me so I can deliver for the American people.
The thing is, Congressman-elect, integrity means, yes, carrying yourself with honor, but it means telling the truth, being a person of integrity. And if I were one of those in New York's 3rd District right now that the election is over, and I'm finding out all of these lies that you've told, not just one little lie or one little embellishment, these are blatant lies. My question is, do you have no shame?
Do you have no shame? Man, Tulsi just torched him.
Well, look, this George Santos saga is wild. It's almost like it's the political version of the film The Talented Mr. Ripley. He intentionally misled about his resume, his jobs, his education, his religion, possibly his wealth. He's being investigated back home. Look, he's going to pay a price in Washington. He's going to be punished by GOP leadership in the House. The only question really at the end of the day is what that punishment will be. But I promise you he's got bigger problems back home in terms of law enforcement.
Well, I guess he knows how bad he's messed up. And for him to be able to show his face, especially against a viper like Tulsi Gabbard, I mean, come on, man.
Well, Tulsi's tenacious. She's absolutely right. I think what might be concerning for a lot of folks out there is there's a lot of people watching who say, you know what, Biden lies every day. Nobody lies more than Joe Biden, or Elizabeth Warren has been lying about being a Native American for decades. Whatever comes of it, this is sort of the nature of the game. I think we do need to clean up that game. But I will say this, Joe, and this is something that was asked to me. You got to realize he's going to serve in Congress. The question's going to be, what will that punishment be? And the idea that the Democrats and the media have that he'll be expelled. Let me tell you something. In the history of Congress, only 5 people have ever been expelled. 3 of them were for supporting the Confederacy, and 2 of them were for bribery. So unless you got him for bribery, chances are he's going to continue to serve. But if he wants to win re-election or even win his own primary, he's got a lot to make up for.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting. Like I said, things like that kind of fall under the radar to people like Floridians. You're not paying much attention to what's going on in New York, but then when you see somebody that just strikes a match under somebody and calls them out publicly, which I think all reporters or journalists ought to be like Tulsi Gabbard.
They should be, but here's my problem with reporters. They only focus on Republicans when it's convenient for them, particularly ahead of the speaker vote, because the House majority is so narrow. My question to you is very simple. If George Santos were a Democrat and they needed George Santos's vote to elect Nancy Pelosi, would the media be going after George Santos like this? And sadly, I don't think they would. That's not an excuse. My point is, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and George Santos should certainly be punished.
Yeah, well, I think George should be punished as well as the other culprits that seem to escape every.
Yeah, well, the problem is that there's no consequences. When you don't fear the consequences, that's why people will mislead to this extent. I mean, you've got Dick Blumenthal, a senator from Connecticut, who's still talking about being in country in Vietnam, and the media never seems to correct him. My problem is that the media only seems to focus on Republicans when it's convenient for the media, and that's why trust in the media is an all-time low. But I think we expect our leaders to be show more morals, and unfortunately it's like a race to the bottom.
Well, I wanted to talk about something else. While the politicians, we expect for them to show truthfulness and transparency, and we grade them on their achievements. Realistically, the world is graded on their achievements. If you don't achieve, then you're not rewarded. Now, we have a high school in Virginia, Thomas Jefferson High School. They're under fire. They were withholding the awards in the name of equity.
We often talk about the war on Christmas, the war on America, the war on the military. Well, this is a great example of the war on merit. And I know about this high school, Thomas Jefferson in Northern Virginia. It is one of the best public schools in America. And when you withhold this type of academic achievement award, you're doing so because you don't want to hurt the feelings of other people. That is what they're telling you. And unfortunately, in some cases, it might have cost people very selective spots in college. This is a big scandal. And unfortunately, I don't think that the media, I'm glad you're covering it, but I don't think the media overall is covering it, because this goes to the degradation of America. The idea is that if you work hard, you can achieve. And here's an instance where a couple of kids worked really hard, and somehow the school decided to hold back this award such that they wouldn't hurt the feelings of the other students. But in doing so, they might have affected their chances at some high-end schools like Harvard, Stanford, and Duke. That's the type of schools that these folks go to.
Well, I just think that we thrive off of our accomplishments. For you to tell me that achievements don't matter and we just need to be all equal, then what does the world come to? Because if nobody ever performs better than the next person, nothing ever gets done. We're just vanilla.
Well, that's your point. That's part of the Marxist agenda. They want to get rid of merit. They want to get rid of national symbols. They want everyone stuck at the bottom so the government can control. That's how this works. And unfortunately, if you don't reward merit, then people aren't going to work harder. And unfortunately, equity, as they say it, is not a financial term as you and I know it. It's a made-up term because they can't say the word equal, because if they do, that would acknowledge merit and achievement. And that is the whole farce here. And unfortunately, it is destroying this country. This sounds like such a small thing, but it goes to so many other things that the socialists are pushing on America.
Well, I can't imagine my child going through 12 years of school and being held back because some liberal is worried about some other child that didn't work as hard. And it just blows my mind that we even accept this in the United States today.
Oh, I know. And you remember, it started when I was younger, when they started giving everyone participation trophies. Unfortunately, they want everyone to feel good, and they don't want to tell you truly who's excelling. I mean, that's the whole hypocrisy of this. Everyone needs to feel like a winner, and you and I both know, unfortunately, there's people who succeed, and there's people that don't, and frankly, the world needs ditch diggers.
Yeah, definitely need some ditch diggers. Well, I want to jump out of the country a minute. I want to talk to you about Putin now. I was watching him address his cabinet the other day, his military cabinet, and he has emphasized how much stronger he has made their military resources. He has bragged about stealth bombs with, or was it hypersonic bombs with capabilities no one else on the planet has. He's bragged about a lot of these things. But in the same respect, he's turned around and he's blaming the U.S. for having this aggression with Ukraine.
Well, look, let's be clear. This aggression did start with Putin first taking Georgia under George W. Bush and then Crimea under Barack Obama. But I will say that Putin is frustrated with the way the conflict is going. He is not where he wants to be. And the U.S. has given, as we've discussed, or at least allocated $100 billion. This war is only 300 plus days old. And to put that in perspective, the Russian military budget's only $65 billion. So he's frustrated by the aid that the U.S. and the EU are giving Ukraine.
Well, now, I kind of wondered about what the Ukrainian citizens actually feel about this whole situation. And I did an interview. I wanted to have you on when I done the interview with a young man named Artur Schilmann. And Arthur is from the Donbass region of Ukraine, and he lives in United Kingdom now in Hull. And shout out to everybody in Hull that's watching today. I appreciate you joining us. But Arthur had I just wanted his take. And if you don't mind, we got a little video here. It's probably about 12 minutes. If you don't mind, let's see it. And I want your take on what Arthur said afterwards. Welcome to Cracker Country, the podcast for Real Floridians. I am Smokin Joe, and I am here with my friend Artur Schilmann. Artur lives in Hull, United Kingdom, and he's originally from the Donbass region of Ukraine. I've been following Arthur for some time. We've been talking as I watched his family exit Ukraine to safety, and me and Arthur stayed in contact until I knew that his family was safe. And I've seen a lot of devastation in pictures and videos that Arthur was trying to share with me. Arthur, I know that you're a very religious man, and I follow you enough to know that you have a strong belief in God. And one of the things, I know that there's two sides to this deal with the conflict in Ukraine. There's people that do not like Zelensky, and there's people that love Zelensky. And me and you talked about it. I think you even had some issues with some of the older folks in your family. But over here, we're spending tons, I'm talking about trillions of dollars to Zelensky, sending him money. And as Americans, most of us are tired of it. We don't understand what we gain for the money we're sending to Zelensky.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the whole Zelensky situation, Joe. Yeah, there is a lot of propaganda going on at the moment. There has been a lot of money pumped into Ukraine, and what people need to understand that none of this money is actually going to the Ukrainian people. It's all going to Zelensky, his corrupt government, the SBU, the Armed Forces of Ukraine, which have incorporated battalions such as Azov, Kraken, Ida and Right Sector. As you know, Joe, these battalions, before they were recognised as Armed Forces of Ukraine, were actually pro-Nazi battalions. So there's a lot of things going on at the moment which people need to know the truth, because what we're seeing on the news, on the mainstream media, is far from the truth.
Well, now, Arthur, you know, I know that when I talked to you before, you felt like, I think maybe your grandmother or somebody, they kind of was buying into the Zelensky thing in the beginning, wasn't they?
Yeah. Well, when my family were still in Ukraine, I mean, my grandmother, she's elderly. She believed everything what she saw on the mainstream media, because the mainstream media is the same information being fed all around the world. It's just one-sided propaganda. So people were not seeing, the real truth and what's happening. But now, people are beginning to see more and more what's actually going on.
And now, from my understanding, now you got a lot of information. You feel like this conflict started because of the FBI's involvement in Ukraine?
That's right, Joe. Yeah, this goes back as far as 2005, when Ukraine allowed US to conduct medical and biological tests and experiments on Ukrainian territory, and that obviously continued when Ukraine went through the Maidan revolutions. If you remember Victoria Nuland, when she visited Ukraine with Joe Biden. So there's been a lot of corruption there. As you know, Joe Biden's son Hunter was also involved in deals as regards to energy and gas in Ukraine as well, and all that's coming out now in mainstream news as well, I believe.
Right. Well, you know, and again, there's two perspectives. I mean, me being able to relate to the people in Ukraine as well as the people in the United States. The people in the United States, like you say, we're listening to mainstream media. They're not seeing what the actual people of Ukraine are going through, nor they really know how the actual Ukrainians feel. And that's a big problem, I think, because a lot of people believe the Ukrainians is all for this push with Zelensky to keep up this territorial war with Putin. And from a lot of the Ukrainians I've talked to, that's not the way they feel. They're all Slavs. They're all Slavic, and they want peace. I mean, what is your take on that, Artur?
Exactly, Joe. I mean, we're the same people. We are Slavic people. So what we're seeing now is brothers going against their own brothers, fathers going against their own sons, and we're seeing it's a division in biblical proportion, because I'm a Christian, as you know, Joe, and the Bible teaches us that in the end, every nation will turn against each other. And this is what we're seeing now. I mean, Ukraine historically has always been split. So Western Ukraine has always been pro-nationalist. If we go back to all, in history in World War II, there are certain people in Ukraine, a small minority, who collaborated with Adolf Hitler, a guy called Stepan Bandera. Now, this is carried on after World War II. So there's always been that problem within Ukraine. You see, Eastern Ukraine, where I'm from, we're more towards Russia, because we are Russian-speaking people, and we've always had a good relationship with Russia. Whereas Western Ukraine have always been anti-Russia, and well, as you know now, the pro-West, the pro-NATO, And this is the problem in this conflict, Joe. NATO. I mean, I've said this for a very long time. Every war since the end of World War II has been the cause of NATO. Russia has not expanded their territory, they've not expanded their bases, but NATO has. And hence the reason why Russia finally had to step in February, and advance on Ukraine, because Ukraine were given all the weapons, all the authorization by their Western puppets to basically enclose Russia. It's a direct threat towards Russia because Ukraine are pushing for nuclear weapons. Russia cannot allow that to happen.
Right.
This is why
and I just watched Putin meet with his security advisors the other day, and he definitely said he was ramping up, and that the Ukraine basically is going to decide that if they don't, that the Russian military is going to decide for them. I see this conflict becoming more Armageddon than anything else before it's over with, as long as you got Zelensky in power.
Yeah. I totally agree with you, Joe, on that. I mean, the difficult situation that's placing a lot of people now is people don't know who to believe and who to trust anymore, Joe, because what we have to understand, it's not just a physical contact war, what we're seeing. We're going through an information war as well. So there's a lot of conflicting information, and hence why people don't know who to trust anymore. And this is why it's important for platforms such as yours and other people to get this information out, because in essence, we are the voice of the people. We are the media. This is why it's up to us to get all the information out.
Yeah. Well, not like I said, and again, I mean, I've been very happy to be able to follow you throughout the last couple of years, and just like me, you went and protested, you stood up for your beliefs, and I admire that in you, Artur, and I would consider you a brother of mine, and I appreciate you coming on. I'd like to have you on again and talk about a few other things, especially how life is in the UK under the new monarchy.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's a lot of what's happening in the UK, Joe, as well. As you know, with the whole Queen situation and the laws, what they're bringing in constantly, while the general public are being distracted with entertainment, etc. So we are going through a cost of living crisis at the moment, which has been engineered as well, Joe. There's a lot of very important information which you guys need to know in the States as well. I'm not sure, Joe, if you're aware of this, but in the UK for the last 2 years, we had hotels up and down the United Kingdom that's been closed down by the government. They've been actually buying small hotels out as well, and they're bringing in a lot of what they call refugees. Now, these people are not refugees because they're all young men, aged from 18 to 35. They're all young, they're all fighting age, and they're all UN soldiers. Some are Albanians, some are Iranians, and they're bringing them in all over the country, and they're paying contracts as well. So these hotels have actually got official government contracts. Now, the reason why they're bringing these people in, because eventually there will be a collapse of the system, the Great Reset, as you know, and they are expecting civil unrest. Now, the British people will never turn against their own. UN soldiers will. So I expect the same to happen in US, and I expect the same to happen all over Europe as well.
Well, like I said, I feel like that us patriots, no matter what country we're in, we have now to take a stand and fight for what we believe we should have as our God-given freedoms, and it seems slowly, well, actually now it seems rapidly like they're getting taken away.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Joe. It's the same as in 2020, where people had to come forward because our world, the way we knew it, has ended. This is what united people. This is what brought people together. And I feel that 2023 is going to be a big year as well. I do believe that we all have to unite again, because I do believe they are going to announce a new pandemic as well. They already had a similar Event 201 style exercise. Don't know if you're aware of that at all, Joe. But they will be announcing a new pandemic, so we have to be prepared.
Yeah, I 100% believe we're fixing to have some new pandemic or epidemic or something coming out. Well, Arthur, I'm going to let you go, but I want to talk to you again, and we have to work together and wherever we're at as patriots to fight the good fight. I love
Amen,
you,
brother. Amen,
and
brother.
God bless you, brother. Thank you for your fight.
Thank you, brother, for having me on your show, Joe. As always, it's been an absolute pleasure and an honor to speak to you, my friend, my brother. And anytime you want to speak again, just hit me up, brother.
All right, Arthur, you have a good day. That was Artur Schilmann. Now, I know that he's in the United Kingdom, and a lot of people are not familiar with this young man, but he has really led a charge against, the lockdowns and any other tyrannical thing that's been going on. But he is very knowledgeable, and I think that if you listen to what he pointed out, is he's a Ukrainian. And he's going to tell you that there is a big faction of people that believe in the Nazi style regime.
Well, look, I think that there's three big things to take away from what he said, I think, for a lot of people watching your show, Joe, and that is that there is a lot of disinformation in the mainstream media, that Zelensky is being treated like the Cold War. He's the hero who cannot be questioned according to the mainstream media. Putin is the bad guy. And look, Ukraine is a melting pot. To the east, they're more sympathetic to Russia, and to the west, they're more sympathetic to mainland Europe. And I think, one of the things that he pointed out that I think is important to understand is that Zelensky's government, while Putin may be a bad guy, Zelensky's government is no angels. And we've seen this year over year with the Ukrainian government. Petro Poroshenko, who came before Zelensky, he was corrupt as could be, and that's why he lost. And I think that we have to keep this in mind from the Ukrainian perspective, that this narrative that Zelensky's this great guy and Putin's this bad guy, it's a little bit more complex than that. And I think we also have to remember from a world perspective that this area of the world led to the last two world wars. So we have to be cautious about what we hear.
Well, now he really has a strong belief, and I know that that's the same belief that Putin is pushing, that NATO is the root cause of our issues. And
well, remember why NATO was set up. NATO was set up specifically in the 1940s to check Russian aggression. So that's actually the textbook definition of NATO. But I will say, when it comes to Ukraine, what often gets left out of this conversation is that when the wall fell, there were a whole bunch of former Soviet nuclear weapons hanging around Ukraine. And the deal was that if the Ukrainians returned the weapons, that Russia would make a pact not to invade their territory. So there's a lot going on here, not just Putin and that, but Putin does, as I explained to you earlier, he took back Georgia in the early 2000s under Bush. So he does want to go back to what he considers Soviet-speaking territories in much the same way that, remember, Hitler during World War II said, well, Poland's mine, Czechoslovakia's mine, because they have Germanic-speaking people. There's a lot more that meets the eye here. But I will say this, that NATO and the mainstream media is looking for regime change when it comes to Russia, and you have to be very leery of that, because you could get somebody much worse than Putin.
Well, yeah, because when I watch his advisors, they look pretty lockstep with Putin on everything that and I know sometimes that, appearances can be deceiving, but, you read people well. Like, I can look at the people in our cabinets and tell that they ain't following Joe Biden's BS.
Well, it's thank God some of them aren't following Joe Biden. It would just be nice if the transportation secretary would fix the Southwest Airlines problem, but he's probably going to muck it up and then go on maternity leave.
Well, I also want to talk to you about our man Andrew Gillum. Now, I got a little clip, small one here. I'll play this and then we'll talk about this.
Former Florida gubernatorial candidate Andrew Gillum, who narrowly lost to Governor Ron DeSantis in 2018, was indicted Wednesday on 21 counts, including fraud charges in connection to his campaign fundraising. The Democrat was charged with wire fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and making false statements to the FBI, according to a Department of Justice press release. Sharon Letman Hicks, one of Gillum's top advisors, is also facing 19 counts of conspiracy and wire fraud charges. Gillum and Letman Hicks allegedly raised donations between 2016 and 2019 while making false promises about the, quote, legitimate purpose of the funds. According to the DOJ, they then allegedly diverted the money to a company owned by Letman Hicks, who then dispersed it, quote, disguised as payroll payments, to Gillum for his personal use. Gillum said in a statement to NBC News the case was politically motivated, claiming, quote, there's been a target on my back ever since I was the mayor of Tallahassee. Gillum added that he has, quote, full confidence that my legal team will prove my innocence now.
I don't have full confidence in that myself. I think he might have dipped in the cookie jar too hard on this one.
Well, look, going back to when he was mayor of Tallahassee, the word on the street always was that he's as dirty as the day is long. And I will tell you, having been in a couple of DA's offices, there's always one rule I tell people. Never lie to the FBI, because if you do lie to the FBI, it's going to be brought to it. But I think this is a bigger problem, Joe. Andrew Gillum was always a media propped up empty suit who was doing some very shady backroom dealings. And the fact that now that he got caught, remember, Andrew Gillum's only sorry that he got caught. Now he's claiming racism. And unfortunately, it does appear, based on the allegations, that he did commit or try to commit conspiracy to have money laundering and fraud, not to mention lying to the FBI. I've always been leery of lying to the FBI, but it's a strict letter thing. But some of these other things are so big, and he's lucky that they're not digging deeper, because if they did, he'd probably be in jail for life.
Yeah, this throwing up the race card on every little thing. I mean, that's the one thing. You don't talk about privilege. That's a privilege that nobody that's not other than white gets that privilege. You can throw that race card, but a white man can't throw that race card. And I'm an Indian. I'm going to tell you, I've got family members I've seen throw out that race card too, and I call bullshit on them.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. This goes back to that Marxist agenda that we talk about and separating people. It's terrible, and affirmative action, as it's being perpetuated by the Biden administration, the Democrats, is destroying America. I will just say, remember this: Andrew Gillum almost beat Ron DeSantis. We're talking less than 34,000 votes. We talk about misinformation in Ukraine. Look at what our media almost hoisted upon Florida. And as I always tell people, when I see them in the streets, I say, just imagine that this guy had won governor. We would have been locked down until 2022, and Florida would not be the special place it is to all of us, but also it wouldn't be the beacon of freedom for the rest of the nation. Yeah, 34,000 votes.
Yeah, I don't know where we'd be at, like you said, if Gillum had won. Thank God for Ron DeSantis.
We'd be like New York. We'd be like New York.
Well, and we talked about this last week, and this is the last show of our year, because we won't do another show next year. So on the last show, I want to talk about some of the things that's happened here in Lee County. Now, we went over the struggles with the REC and the new leadership and the outgoing leadership. And one of the things that I've said, and I've come out pretty strong, is, the election's over. You know who is your chairman, you know who your vice chair, you know who all those people is. It's time you either get behind those people and support them so that they prosper, or you just get out of the REC altogether. Now, that being said, there's still a group, and it's the establishment group, the Never Trumpers, are still trying to stir up in the mix that the new group of the REC is anti-DeSantis and pro-Trump, which I don't see nothing farther from the truth in my eyes.
Well,
And
this is the problem with the establishment of Lee County. They lost an election. That's not enough. You have to realize that they're going to continue to scheme and lie because all they lust after is power. And people need to be aware of this. You need to give the new board a chance to succeed, because if they don't succeed, we all fail in Lee County. And they have to understand the stakes. It's not about who you like or who you don't like. You had that election. The establishment lost. Now you got to try to help the new folks succeed, because when they succeed, you succeed.
yeah, well, and the reason I bring that up is I had a phone call, and you know, when you get involved in this, and I don't know how it is on your end, but my phone goes 24/7. There's a text message, an instant message, a phone call. But
That's why I have two.
Yeah, and you know, and so my phone started ringing the other day, and the question come from a very prominent person in the community. And she said, Joe, I got a question. He said, no, figured you'd know. And she said, Missy Laster. Now, as soon as she said Missy Laster, I'm like, kind of, you know, I pulled back because, look, I'm trying to, some of them people I feel like aren't even worth mentioning. Missy's one of them. But however, if you are a flat out liar, I'm going to expose it. And so Missy Laster has went and called these people and telling lies that Governor DeSantis won't get within 10 feet of Alfie Oaks, and Alfie Oaks tried to bribe the governor and all this, which is, and I told the person to call me, I said, you tell Missy Laster she can call me, I'll tell her to her face she's full of crap. Missy, you're full of crap. There's no such beef there, and the only one that's trying to stir that up is you and the establishment that just lost.
Well, let me say this about Missy Laster and my dealings with her. I've found her to be someone who's only concerned about herself. She's not concerned about what's best for Southwest Florida, what's best for Lee County, what's best for America. She's always about where she can muscle in and how she can make money. So when you realize it, you have to realize what perspective she's coming from, and it's very hard to believe anything she says. And if she says something nutty to you, you better trust and verify it before you believe it.
And that coming on the heels, I've heard rumors that she is trying to start her own political consulting firm. You know, she didn't do much for the people she consulted for in this last election. I don't know what she's going to do for anybody in the future.
Well, she's someone in my experience whose resume outpaces her talent. I'm going to be totally honest with you. I haven't ever seen her truly deliver. She's always on the periphery, and unfortunately, she's taken some swipes at me, and I want to be upfront about that. But she's not someone that I would trust, is being a consultant for me.
Yeah, no, and again, and I know who that she's talking about going in business with and things like that. And I think sometimes you got to check whether that's the best business venture you want to join when somebody starts their business venture out by telling lies on one of the most well-known patriotic figures in her area. I mean, come on, man. You tell it out on me or something, you get away with it, but don't tell it on somebody like Alfie Oaks. I mean, please.
Well, I hear you. I think the biggest problem in Southwest Florida politically, besides the establishment, is that you have a lot of what I call backstabbing and tattletale campaigns. And to be totally honest with you, this crap needs to stop. If you've got a problem with someone, call them. Call them and ask them what the question is. Don't go on hearsay, because everyone here is playing both sides against the middle, and that's why we're not as great as we could be in Lee County and in Southwest Florida.
No. Well, Ford, I want to talk about one more story, and it is a Florida story, and this is about to come pretty big news here in Lee County. And I'm reluctant to talk about it because I support our local law enforcement, and I mean, from Carmine Marcino, Sheriff Rambos, to Sheriff Whitten out here. I think all of them men do an outstanding job. However, there's a controversy going on with Lee County Sheriff Carmine Marcino for doing a perp walk of a student in the 5th grade, And I got just a little video of what Carmine said.
The sheriff isn't playing games. I don't play games with lives. Fake threat, real consequence.
That message from Lee County Sheriff Carmine Marcino came just hours after one of the deadliest school shootings in history, more than 1,300 miles away in Uvalde, Texas. But just 3 days after that news conference, a Cape Coral fifth grader is facing felony charges, accused of sending a threat against Patriot Elementary School.
Now, that's a fifth grade kid. Now, I think that was premature. I've looked at the findings in that case, and man, that's awful iffy to be an actual threat. I mean, I've seen the kid took a picture off the internet of some money. Now, that's no different than what you see in these rap videos. People take pictures of a bunch of money, take pictures of a bunch of guns or whatever. And I didn't really, it's awful vague for there to be a threat by this fifth grader.
Let me say this just so the viewers know. I've worked in a couple of DA's offices, and like you, I tip my hat always to the men and women in blue for serving and protecting us. And look, they make mistakes. I think the lesson here is, if you're Carmine or any one of the other 67 sheriffs, and that is, when you're dealing with a minor, you've got to be a lot more careful in terms of media coverage and how you talk about a case. Look, hopefully Carmine winds up being right, but that does not appear to be the case based on the allegations. And I think the lesson here going forward is, when you're dealing with someone so young, you just have to treat them with kid gloves, because, you know, unfortunately, everyone makes mistakes. Our law enforcement is human. And unfortunately, some mistakes you can't come back from because they do involve a minor. So, again, it's always about being – I'm not passing judgment on Carmine. All I'm saying is you just got to be careful, particularly when dealing with minors.
Well, like I said, I mean, I give Carmine and all the law enforcement all the credit in the world for the job they do. However, about Carmine, not throwing him under the bus, but he ought to quit trying to be Grady Judd and be the Lee County Sheriff. Grady Judd's old school. He's got that reputation from years back. He's a country sheriff. And Carmine, to me, with the Marcino Motel and all this stuff, he's trying to compete with Grady Judd, and Carmine will never compete with Grady Judd.
Well, look, there's always politics because sheriff is an elected position. I will just say again, you got to be careful, because what looks good today may not look good tomorrow. And that's sort of, you know, where politics intersects with law enforcement, and they've got to remember that.
Well, Ford, I appreciate you joining me today for the show, and I guess we'll wrap it up and do it again next week. As always, it's a pleasure. Love, peace, and gator grease. I'm Smokin Joe for Cracker Culture Podcast for Real Floridians. Ford, take care, brother.
Happy New Year, my friend.
Happy New Year.